Hey guys, for guided reading, I'm reading chapter 2 of Monster Slayer. Just to quickly recap, there was a king and he built a big hall, do you remember? And he was having a party. There's the king, doesn't look very party-like though. They had a party, and because they were making lots of noise, they upset a monster called Grendel. And chapter 2 is all about the monster Grendel. Okay, I'm going to read this like I would read it on the big screen at school to you. So I'm going to stop and be slightly annoying, but in a way, you hopefully understand it as I go. So here we go. Grendel lived in the fens. Now, fens are flat, marshy lands. So Grendel lived in the fens and the foul, smelling marshlands. Marsh is boggy land beyond the forest. The marsh was littered with oozing pools. What's oozing mean? If something oozes, it means it leaks fluid. The marsh was littered, splattered around with oozing pools, and the festering, yuck, festering means rotting, and the festering remains of dead otters, grim, and decaying, rotting fish. What a place! No one, not even the bravest warrior, went there. The place reeked. Reek means stank. The place reeked of evil. Right, your job is to pause this video and read what I've just read to you. Next paragraph. It says here, evil suited Grendel. He was half man, check out the hyphen, half monster, a terrible creature, stronger almost than any living thing. He was covered in a green, horny, horny means I think tough, a green horny skin that no sword could cut. So he must have been really tough. And he came from a race of sea monsters, giant goblins, and other outcasts from the human race. What? And he came from a race. It doesn't mean a race as in a running race. It means a race as in a kind of people. And he came from the kind of people that were sea monsters, giants, goblins, and other outcasts. Oh, I've heard of that word before. That means they've been cast out. They've been left out from the human race, the humankind. Okay, your job is to pause this and read it. Third paragraph. Next one. Grendel was in the habit of sleeping for hundreds of years, like my son. When the king's feast, we know what feast is, don't we? Great big party food. When the king's feast began, he had been asleep so long that the king and his subjects, that means the king and his people, had forgotten he ever existed. If they thought of him at all, they remembered him as a creature from legends. They're kind of made up stories. That was their big mistake. So who's big? What big mistake? So somebody made a big mistake. I know, it was the king and his subjects. The king and his people made a big mistake because they didn't remember him, and they only remembered him as a creature from legends. So they didn't really take him seriously. Next paragraph. Can you pause it there and have a go reading that yourself? Next one. Ooh, I have a feeling this is going to go wrong. And now the sound of music and human laughter had wakened Grendel. Waken means woke up. He rose, got up from his nest of rat's bones. Oh my goodness, he sleeps in a nest. And the nest is made out of rat's bones. Pause it and read it yourself. What a monster. He, that's Grendel, he sat among the slithering eels and the smell of decay, and he listened. Slithering eels are creatures, they're like snakes that live underwater. And the smell of decay means rotting. So he listened, and he was listening to the party. Grendel hated music. He hated it because he hated the humans that made it. He hated it with a hatred that burned bright as a star. He hated it as only a demon, that means devil, can hate. It reminded him of what an outcast he was. Oh, I know. He could hear everyone else having fun, and it made him really, really angry because it reminded him that he wasn't invited. He was an outcast. He was cast out. He wasn't invited. In his ears, that music sounded like the buzzing of flies. Your job is to pause it and read that. While the king and his warriors is an old-fashioned word for soldiers. So while the king and his warriors feasted, gobbled, and drank, the monster Grendel shook off 100 years of sleep. Pause it and reread it. Why should people be happy? He wondered. Why should they make music and sing and hold great feasts while I sit alone in a stinking bog? Grendel was full of jealousy and hatred. Pause it and read it for yourself. Try to do a Grendel voice. I'll destroy their joy, he thought. Grendel slouched. That's kind of a bent walking. Grendel slouched across the marshland, the soggy land, and forest towards the great hall. Oh, that's the party hall. As he passed, the creatures of the night shivered with fear and fell silent. The owls stopped hooting. Frogs stopped croaking. The nightingale's song stuck in its throat. Badgers returned to their sets. That's what you call a badger's home, like a burrow. Badgers returned to their sets underground. Even the shadows recoiled. That means turned away frightened. Even the shadows recoiled from Grendel as he flowed through the night like poison spilt from a cup. So Grendel flowed. Almost makes him sound a bit like a fish. But he was like poison, and poison's deadly. And even the animals of the night, the badgers and the owls didn't make a noise because they were frightened of him. They recoiled. They were frightened of him. Your job is to pause it and read what I've just read. Ooh, don't wobble the what's her name. Ooh, keep still. Grendel waited, hidden among the trees, until the great hall had fallen silent, and the last guests, visitors, had wandered to their homes, sleepy and tired from the feasting. I have a feeling this is going to get grisly. Your job is to pause it and read it. The king had left his favourite warriors, soldiers, to guard the great hall, but there had been peace in the land for so long that they did not take their duty seriously. So these warriors were supposed to be guarding the Great Hall. They were supposed to be guarding the Great Hall, but they did not take their duty seriously. And oh my goodness, who's coming? Stinky Bogman's coming. Your job is to pause it and read it. They fell asleep. These are the guards. They fell asleep and they did not hear Grendel croaking his terrible song as he moved out from the shadows towards them. Croaking makes him sound like a frog, some sort of beast. Your job is to pause it and read it. Now this page is a bit of a strange fish because it's like someone is, there's a 66 and there's a 99. That means someone's talking. I wonder who's talking. Sweet human meat's the best to eat, and human bones the best to grind. Human blood will flow again, and terror haunt the human mind. Your job is to pause it and read it. I have a feeling Grendel might be saying that. And he's talking about, oh yeah, eating human meat. He's a man-eater. And he's talking about grinding human bones. That means crushing them to a powder. And terror haunt the human mind. And he's going to spook them forever. Almost there. 100 years of sleep had left Grendel hungry. Not surprised. He crashed into the great hall and surprised the sleeping soldiers. He plucked, that means pulled, he plucked off their arms and legs as if they were petals. Petals are pieces of flowers. And he plucked their arms and legs off. That's gross. Ugh. Blood filled the great hall. It dripped from the rafters. The rafters means the roof. It dripped. That's blood, isn't it? It dripped from the rafters and flowed out into the moonlight. Grendel ate his fill. Then he gathered. Hang on, what did he eat? I have a horrible feeling he's eating soldiers. Grendel ate his fill of soldiers. Grim. Then he gathered up the warriors he could not eat into his arms, and the demon slouched back off to his nest in the fetid, stinking marshland pools. Hang on. Then he gathered up the warriors he could not eat into his arms. So he ate some, he ate his fill, and then he grabbed a few for like a takeaway. Then he gathered up the warriors he could not eat into his arms. He had a takeaway. Grim. And the demon, devil, that's Grendel, and the devil slouched. It's kind of a bent walking back off into his nest in the fetid, stinking marsh pools. Now let them sing, he thought. Your job is to pause and read that page again. Okay?